People often ask, what does it take to be treated like a man? And while the question might sound straightforward, the answer touches something much deeper. We live in a time where the markers of manhood are increasingly unclear. But one thing remains true. If you want to be treated like a man, you have to take responsibility before you ever think about taking control. This is where a lot of young men get stuck. There's a natural desire to assert yourself, to lead, to be respected. But respect isn't handed out with age or appearance. It's earned quietly, consistently through responsibility. The idea that you can skip that part, that you can somehow demand authority before demonstrating accountability, just doesn't hold up. And people know it. We sense it instinctively. If someone walks into a room trying to control everything, but hasn't, that confusion stems from this cultural shift where traditional roles have changed, but haven't been replaced with a clear roadmap. So when in doubt, some default to control. They try to assert themselves, sometimes aggressively, thinking it will earn them recognition. But control without credibility is brittle. It doesn't last. Credibility comes from taking ownership. That means taking ownership of your decisions, your relationships, your future. It means recognizing that no one else is coming to sort things out for you, that the world doesn't owe you a purpose or a plan. This doesn't mean you're alone. It just means that no one can carry your responsibility for you. And paradoxically, when you start carrying it yourself, that's when people start to see you differently. They begin to treat you like a man. Now, that doesn't mean you'll always get it right. Part of responsibility is owning your failures as much as your successes. But here's the thing. When you take responsibility for a mistake, rather than make excuses or blame others, people don't think less of you. They actually think more. Because maturity isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. When a man can say, that was on me, it signals strength, emotional strength, moral strength. And that kind of strength commands respect far more than bravado or posturing ever could. It also means being responsible in the quiet moments, returning a call you didn't want to make, showing up to a job that doesn't excite you because you gave your word, being there for someone not because it benefits you, but because it's the right thing to do. These are small moments, but they add up. They shape your character. And character is what people look for when they decide whether to take you seriously. As a man, as a peer, as someone who matters. There's also a connection between responsibility and freedom that's often overlooked. We think of freedom as doing whatever we want, but the deeper form of freedom comes through structure, through taking ownership of your time, your habits, your direction. When you become the person who others can rely on, who follows through, who makes things happen without needing to be told, something powerful shifts. You no longer feel adrift. You have a sense of internal compass. That's the kind of man others trust. And trust is the currency of real leadership. This principle plays out across every domain. In work, people follow the ones who show up early, stay late, and take ownership, not the ones who bark orders. In relationships, partners look for someone who will carry their share of the emotional weight, not someone who disappears at the first sign of discomfort. In friendships, we value the ones who hold themselves to a standard, who are reliable when it matters most. In every case, it begins with the willingness to take responsibility. So if you're waiting for someone to treat you like a man, stop waiting. Don't look around hoping someone will hand you that recognition. Instead, start by owning your own life, not in loud declarations, but in quiet discipline. Take the tough feedback, accept the consequences, make the next right choice. And when you do that, something profound begins to shift, not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. That's when people start to treat you like a man, because that's exactly what you've become. If there's one thing that separates the boy from the man, it's this. A man knows how to wait. He knows how to delay gratification, not because he enjoys pain or loves struggle, but because he understands something deeper. He knows that good things take time and that lasting rewards rarely come quickly. In a culture obsessed with the now, with instant validation, with short-term pleasure, the man who can say not yet instead of yes now is becoming a rarity. And that rarity is exactly what commands respect. Delayed gratification isn't just about resisting dessert or holding back on spending. It's about learning to govern your impulses, to think long-term and to work toward a future that's not guaranteed, but possible. That's hard. And that's precisely why it's manly, because it requires a kind of internal discipline that doesn't come naturally. We're not born patient. We're born hungry, restless, demanding, but manhood, real manhood, is about cultivating restraint, not because someone else is watching, but because you are, because you've decided that your future self matters more than your present craving. This isn't just philosophical, it's practical. The ability to delay gratification is one of the strongest predictors of success, not just materially, but personally and relationally. The man who can put in the hours today for a payoff months or years from now, that man earns trust. He becomes reliable, and reliability, like gravity, pulls others towards you. Employers, partners, friends, they all look for people who can show up and stick it out. And that's what delayed gratification is at its core, sticking it out. Think about the difference between a boy who wants to be seen as powerful right now and a man who's willing to build real strength over time. One demands respect, the other earns it. That's the difference. You don't earn respect by being loud, by showing off, or by grabbing attention. You earn it by doing the work quietly, consistently, and often without applause. The gym you go to when no one's watching, the job you grind through when no one says thank you, the family you support even when you're exhausted, that's where manhood is formed. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, not in the reward, but in the waiting. There's a deeper message here about identity too. A man who can delay gratification knows who he is, and more importantly, who he is becoming. That future vision of a better, stronger, more grounded version of himself guides his choices. He doesn't need immediate approval because he's aiming at something bigger. He's not reacting to every impulse because he's connected to a purpose. He's not just looking for the next hit of dopamine. He's building a life. And that life is built brick by brick, decision by decision over time. That's especially true in relationships. If you want to be treated like a man in your relationships with your partner, your kids, your friends, it starts with showing that you're not driven by impulse, that you can think beyond yourself and beyond the moment, that you can listen when you'd rather interrupt, support when you'd rather withdraw, and stand firm when you'd rather run. That's delayed gratification in action. And it doesn't just build respect, it builds trust. People know they can count on you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. None of this is amorous. And that's part of the point. We've created a culture where masculinity is often portrayed as loud, aggressive, and attention-seeking. But the men who are truly respected, the ones people turn to in crisis, the ones others quietly admire, those men are often understated. They're the ones who spent years cultivating patience, discipline, and purpose. They've said no to 1,000 small pleasures so they could say yes to something bigger. And they don't need to tell you they're men, you just know. So if you want to be treated like a man, you have to act like time is your ally, not your enemy. You have to become comfortable with the slow path. Because the truth is, nothing meaningful happens overnight. Character takes time, trust takes time, wisdom takes time. And the man who can wait, who can put in the work, who can tolerate discomfort, who can stay steady when others flinch, is the man others will naturally look to. That's how it works. It's not magic, it's maturity. People don't treat you like a man because of your age, your physique, or your bravado. They treat you like a man when you show them that you are someone who can delay gratification, stay the course, and keep your eyes on a goal that lies beyond the horizon. And when you can do that, you don't need to demand respect. You just start receiving it. Strength without dominance, that's where real masculinity begins. I think we've gotten a bit confused culturally about what strength actually looks like in a man. For too long, we've associated manhood with aggression, bravado, and even violence, as if the measure of a man is how many people he can intimidate or control. But let me suggest something different. True masculinity isn't about imposing your will on the world. It's about having the capacity to do so and choosing not to. It's about restraint, not recklessness. Power, yes, but under moral discipline. When we talk about being treated like a man, people don't respond to force. They respond to the sense that you are stable, trustworthy, and self-possessed. A man who has strength, but doesn't need to show it off, is the man others instinctively respect. He doesn't need to raise his voice, puff up his chest, or make everything a confrontation. His presence alone says, "You're safe with me. You're respected by me. I won't flinch when things get hard." We see this often in men who've gone through something, really gone through it. Maybe they've struggled with failure, grief, fatherhood, or personal setbacks. These are the men who've come out the other side, not hardened, but refined. Their strength is quieter, it's steadier. They don't just endure pain, they metabolize it, learn from it, and become more grounded. That kind of strength doesn't scream, it stands. And this isn't just emotional. Physical strength matters too. I don't mean looking like a superhero. I mean the physical presence that says, I'm capable. Not so you can dominate a space, but so you can carry a burden if needed. So you can show up when others fall back. So you can be the one who moves toward danger when everyone else hesitates. That's strength in service, not strength in pursuit of status. But the danger is that many young men today are being told either to be hyper-masculine, aggressive, angry, always asserting themselves, or to abandon strength altogether, to make themselves small, apologetic, passive. Neither path works. One leads to destruction, the other to irrelevance. The sweet spot, the real calling, is to cultivate inner strength that's governed by self-awareness, empathy, and restraint. Let's think about that word, restraint. It's argued as one of the highest virtues of manhood. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can punch a wall. Anyone can dominate a weaker person. But it takes far more strength to stay calm under pressure, to de-escalate conflict, to refuse to humiliate someone just because you could. That's what earns real respect. That's what makes others treat you like a man, not because they fear you, but because they trust you. This kind of strength is also crucial in relationships, in partnerships, in parenting, in work, in community. If you're the kind of man whose strength makes people feel safe, not silenced, then you've become someone worth following, worth listening to. Because when a man can channel his strength into stability, not dominance, everyone around him benefits. He becomes a foundation others can build on, not a wrecking ball they have to work around. A man who doesn't need to be the loudest to be heard, who doesn't need to control everything to lead, who doesn't equate kindness with weakness. In fact, he knows the opposite is true. It takes incredible strength to be kind in a cruel world, to show vulnerability when you're expected to be stone, to choose forgiveness over vengeance. But those choices aren't soft. They're evidence of someone who is secure in who he is. That's why strength without dominance is so important. Because dominance is often a mask for insecurity. When you peel it back, you often find a man who's unsure of himself, afraid of being perceived as weak, and trying to overcompensate. But real strength doesn't need a mask. It's honest, it's earned, it's tested, not in the moments when things are easy, but in the moments when everything's falling apart and you keep your feet firmly on the ground. So when people ask, how do I get treated like a man? This is one of the answers. Be strong, but make your strength a gift to others, not a threat. Be the one who absorbs the blow, not the one who delivers it. Be the calm in the storm, the one who protects without controlling, leads without shouting, and shows up when it really matters. So much of what it means to be a man today has been reduced to the art of tearing things down. Online, in politics, in culture, it's fashionable to critique, to dismantle, to point out what's wrong. And there's no shortage of things that are wrong, but being treated like a man, truly respected as a man, doesn't come from being the loudest critic in the room. It comes from being the one who builds. When you're a builder, people see that you're investing in something beyond yourself. That could be a business, a relationship, a skill, a community. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It rarely is. But the act of building, of choosing to engage, to improve, to shape the world rather than just judge it, that act sends a strong signal to others. It says, here's someone taking responsibility, not just passing. It demands effort. It demands vision. Think about the men in your life you respect. Really think about them. I'm willing to bet that they are builders. Maybe not in the literal sense, though some might be. Maybe they built a home or a family. Maybe they mentored others, helped younger men find their way. Maybe they started something that others can rely on today. And maybe what they built isn't even around anymore. But the effort, the intent, the investment, that's what made them respected. There's something deeply masculine about creating stability, providing structure, offering security, not as a form of control, but as a foundation others can stand on. That's what builders do. They create spaces, physical, emotional, relational, where others can flourish. That's leadership. That's masculinity in action. And people recognize it. In today's culture, we sometimes confuse flash with substance. It's easy to get attention by yelling from the sidelines. But what gets respect, long-term enduring respect, is doing the hard work that others don't see, showing up early, staying late, practicing the skill, repairing what's broken, not for praise, not for clout, but because it matters, because someone has to, because it's the right thing to do. One of the most powerful shifts a man can make in his life is moving from a mindset of consumption to one of creation. Not just what can I get, but what can I give? Not just what's wrong with this, but what could this become? That's the builder's mindset, and it's magnetic. People are drawn to men who build because they bring order out of chaos. They bring direction to uncertainty. They don't just see the problem, they become part of the answer. And let me tell you that building doesn't always mean success. It doesn't mean you'll win every time. Builders fail, sometimes often. They make mistakes. But even in failure, there's honor in the effort because people see that you cared enough to try. You took a risk. You moved forward when others stood back. That alone earns respect. It's especially important today when so many young men feel lost or disoriented. They're told what not to be, what not to do, how not to behave, but they're rarely shown what to build towards. And that leaves a vacuum. If you step into that vacuum and start building something, anything, people will take notice. They'll treat you differently because you've stopped waiting, you've started leading. And here's the beautiful thing. Building is not about being the best, the strongest, or the smartest. It's about being present, being committed, being someone others can rely on. In a world that often feels unstable, the man who builds brings stability. And that's not just useful, that's powerful, that's respectable. So if you want to be treated like a man, start there. Start with your hands, with your habits, with your word. Build something, anything. Do it quietly if you must, do it imperfectly if you must, but do it because the world needs fewer critics and more craftsmen, fewer performers and more builders. That's when they'll start treating you like a man. Let me tell you something that's increasingly rare and increasingly valuable in our world today, the ability to speak with integrity, even when it costs you. I want to talk to you about that, not because it's fashionable, not because it gets you applause, but because it's one of the clearest markers that people look for when deciding whether to treat you like a man, not just a male, plenty of those around, but a man in the fullest sense of the word. We often think respect comes from being the loudest voice in the room or from having the sharpest argument. But in truth, it often comes from being the person others know they can trust when it really matters. And trust isn't built on charm or confidence. It's built on consistency and courage. The courage to speak honestly, especially when you stand to lose something by doing so. Now, there's nothing inherently masculine about honesty. It's a human virtue. But when we're talking about what it means to grow into manhood, to earn the kind of respect that isn't demanded but freely given, honesty plays a crucial role. Why? Because the temptation to twist the truth, whether to impress, to avoid conflict, or to escape accountability, is something every boy must learn to resist if he's going to be treated like a man. Think about the environments where men are truly respected. In healthy workplaces, in solid friendships, in committed relationships, it's not the smooth talkers who win in the long run. It's the ones who say the thing that needs to be said, even when it's awkward, even when it's risky. When you speak with integrity, you're not performing. You're grounding yourself in reality, and that's what people instinctively trust. But integrity is tested not in the easy moments, but in the hard ones. It's easy to be honest when there's no cost. It's when the truth might make you look weak or guilty or vulnerable. That's when your character gets measured. Maybe. It's owning up to a mistake at work. Maybe it's admitting you were wrong in a conversation with your partner. Maybe it's calling out a friend when they're heading down a harmful path. Those are the moments where your words carry the most weight because they come at a price. We all want to be seen as reliable, as capable, as strong. And sometimes we think that means keeping the truth tucked away, smoothing over the rough edges of reality. But strength without truth is hollow. If you want people to treat you like a man, you have to show them that your word means something, that it holds steady, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Now, let's be honest. In a culture saturated with curated images, performative outrage, and surface-level communication, integrity can feel like swimming upstream. There's pressure to say what's popular, to hide what's inconvenient, to avoid conflict at all costs. But being a man isn't about going with the flow. It's about knowing who you are and being brave enough to live it out loud. It also means recognizing that honesty isn't the same as brutality. Some men here speak the truth and think it gives them license to be harsh, to dominate conversations under the banner of just being real. That's not integrity. That's immaturity in disguise. Integrity means you speak truth with purpose, not with ego. It means you're just as willing to hear the truth from others as you are to speak it yourself. And let's not forget, speaking with integrity isn't just about how others see you, it shapes how you see yourself. Every time you choose truth over convenience, you're strengthening something inside of you. You're forming a spine, not just a shell. And over time, that shows. People notice. They may not say it out loud, but they know the difference between someone who performs strength and someone who actually carries it. Men who speak with integrity create trust. And trust is the foundation of every relationship, personal, professional, or otherwise. When people know they can count on your word, they begin to treat you not just as someone they like or someone they agree with, but someone they respect, someone they follow, someone they call when it matters. So, if you're asking what it takes to be treated like a man, start here. Don't just speak truthfully. Don't just sound confident, be honest. And when that honesty costs you something, when it would be easier to say nothing or to lie, choose the harder road. That's where people really start to see you, because nothing commands respect more than the quiet power of a man who tells the truth, especially when he doesn't have to. When we talk about what it means to be treated like a man, a lot of the focus tends to drift toward external performance, how you look, what you earn, how assertive you appear in a room. But the truth is, those things fade, they come and go. Muscles shrink, bank accounts fluctuate, status can be stripped away in a moment. So if we root our identity as men in those things, we're building on sand. The shift comes when you stop trying to perform manhood and start living with purpose. This isn't about adopting some grand philosophical position. It's about waking up in the morning and having clarity on what you're building toward, who you're showing up for, and what values anchor your decisions. That's where manhood begins, not in optics, but in orientation. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing why you're doing what you're doing, not just going through the motions, not just trying to impress people or silence doubts, but moving through the world with intention. And the irony is, once you stop chasing approval and start living from purpose, people begin to treat you differently. They sense something solid, not performative, not brittle, but grounded. This doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out. It means you've made a decision to stop living reactively and start living intentionally. The world respects men who know what they're about, especially in a time where confusion and drift are common. Purpose in its context is like a compass. It doesn't prevent storms, but it keeps you from sailing in circles. Now, purpose can look different for different men. For some, it's rooted in fatherhood. For others, it's their craft or a mission they believe in. But in every case, it's bigger than ego. It pulls you beyond yourself. When you're living with that kind of direction, setbacks don't define you. Criticism doesn't derail you. Applause doesn't inflate you. Because your sense of self isn't built on performance, it's built on purpose. Let me tell you, there's a lot of pressure on men today to prove themselves, to show they belong, to compete, to dominate, to rise. And I understand that instinct. But chasing validation leads to exhaustion, not fulfillment. When everything becomes a performance, you lose touch with who you actually are. More importantly, you lose the trust of those around you, because people can feel when you're not anchored. They sense when you're compensating, not committing. And yet, we still see this constant temptation to perform masculinity instead of practicing it. That's part of the problem. It becomes an image game. But masculinity isn't a look. It's a way of being. It's how you show up when no one's watching. It's how you respond when things fall apart. It's how you treat people who have nothing to offer you. Purpose governs those choices. And that's what makes a man trustworthy, respected, needed. So what does it look like in practice? It looks like aligning your time with your values. If you say family matters, you show up, you're present. If you say hard work matters, you don't cut corners. If you say stand for something. You don't sell out the moment it becomes inconvenient. That alignment, that consistency is what separates boys from men. And you don't need a title or a certain number of followers or a particular job to do that. You just need to decide who you want to be and act accordingly. Purpose also allows you to say no. When you know what you're about, you can let go of distractions. You can resist the pull of things that feel good in the moment but steal your future. That kind of clarity is magnetic. People may not always agree with you, but they'll respect the fact that you're not swayed by every trend, every opinion, every fear. And here's the thing, men with purpose don't need to dominate others to feel secure. They don't need to broadcast their strength. They don't need to win every argument because their value isn't up for negotiation. It's already been decided internally. That's what gives you stability. That's what gives you peace. So if you want to be treated like a man, stop asking the world to give you that recognition. Start living like someone who's already earned it. Be someone with direction. Be someone whose actions and words line up. Don't just wear the uniform of manhood, do the work. That's where respect comes from. That's where trust grows. That's where manhood is formed, not through applause, but through quiet, consistent, purposeful living. That's when people will treat you like a man, because that's exactly what you are.